Hello friends, welcome back to Christmas Stories with Pastor Macy. We are going to read The Worker in Sandalwood, a Christmas Eve miracle. I did not grow up with this story. It's one I discovered as an adult, and I think it's fabulous. So I hope you like it too. I like to think of this as a true story. But you who read may please yourselves, siding either with the curé who say that Hyacinth dreamed it all and did all the carving in himself in his sleep, or with Madame. I am sure that Hyacinth thinks it is true, and so does Madame, but then she has the cabinet with the little birds and the lilies carved at the corners. Monsieur le curé shrugs his patient shoulders, but then he is tainted with the infidelities of cities, good man, having been 3 times to Montreal and once in an electric car to St. Anne. He and Madame still talk it over whenever they meet, though it happened so many years ago, and each leaves the other forever unconvinced. Meanwhile, the dust gathers in the infinite fine lines of the little bird's feathers and softens the lily stamens where Madame's duster cannot go. The wood aging takes on a golden gleam as of immemorable sunsets, the pale red wood heavy set with the scent of the ancient East, the wood that Hyacinth loved. It was the only wood of that kind which had been seen in Terminasion. Pierre Lauriel brought it into the workshop one morning, a small, heavy bundle wrapped in sacking, and then in burlap, and then in fine, soft cloths. He laid it on a pile of shavings, unwrapped it carefully, and a dim sweetness filled the dark shed and hung heavily in the thin winter sunbeams. Pierre Lauriel rubbed the wood respectfully with his knobby fingers. "It is sandalwood," he explained to Hyacinth, pride of knowledge making him expansive. "A most precious wood that grows in warm countries. Smell it. It is sweeter than cedar. It is to make a cabinet for the old Madame at the big house. Thy great hands shall smooth the wood, boy, and I, Pierre the cabinet maker, shall render it beautiful." Then he went out, locking the door behind him. When he was gone, Hyacinth laid down his plane, blew on his stiff fingers, and shambled slowly over to the wood. He was a great clumsy boy of 14, dark-faced, slow of speech, dull-eyed, and uncared for. He was clumsy because it is impossible to move gracefully when you are growing very big and fast on quite insufficient food. He was dull-eyed because all eyes met his unlovingly, uncared for, because none knew the beauty of his soul. But his heavy young hands could carve simple things, like flowers and birds and beasts, to perfection, as the curé pointed out. Simon has a tobacco jar carved with pine cones and squirrels, and the curé has a pipe whose bowl is the bloom of a lady's slipper that I have seen, but this is all very long ago. Hyacinth knew that the making of the cabinet would fall to him, as most of the other work did. He touched the strange sweet wood, and at last laid his cheek against it, while the fragrance caught his breath. "How beautiful it is," said Hyacinth, and for a moment his eyes glowed, and he was happy. Then the light passed, and with bent head he shuffled back to his bench, through a foam of white shavings, curling almost to his knees. "Madame perhaps will want the cabinet next week, for that is Christmas," said Hyacinth, as he fell to work harder than ever, though it was so cold in the shed that his breath hung like a little silver cloud, and the steel stung his hands. There was a tiny window to his right, through which, when it was clear of frost, one looked on Termination, and that was cheerful and made one whistle. But to the left, through the chink of the ill-fitting door, there was nothing but the forest, and the road dying away in it, and the trees moving heavily under the snow. Yet from there came all Hyacinth's silent dreams and reluctant fancies, which he sometimes found himself able to tell, in wood, not in words. Brandy was good at the Cinque Chateau, and Pierre Lauriel gave Hyacinth plenty of directions, but no further help with the cabinet. "That it is to be finished for Madame on the festival, dullard," he said, cuffing Hyacinth's ears furiously. "Finished with prettiness about the corners. Hearest thou, dolt? I suffer from a delicacy of the constitution and a little feebleness in the legs these days, so I cannot handle the tools. I must leave this work to thee, clumsy. See it is done properly, and stand up and touch a hand to thy cap when I address thee, you great oaf." "Yes, monsieur," said Hyacinth wearily. "It is hard when you do all the work to be cuffed into the bargain, and 14 is not very old." Hyacinth went to work on the cabinet with slow, exquisite skill, but on the eve of Noel he was still at work and the cabinet not completed. It meant a thrashing from Pierre if the morrow came and found it still unfinished, and Pierre's thrashings were cruel, but it was growing into a thing of perfection under Hyacinth's slow hands, and he would not hurry over it. "Then work on it all night, and show it to me all completed in the morning, or thy bones shall mourn thy idleness," said Pierre with a flicker of his little eyes. And he shut Hyacinth into the workshop with a smoky lamp, his tools, and the sandalwood cabinet. It was nothing unusual. The boy had often been left before to finish a piece of work overnight, while Pierre went off with his brandies. But this was Christmas Eve, and Hyacinth was very tired. The cold crept into the shed until even the scent of the sandalwood could not make him dream himself warm, and the roof cracked sullenly in the frost. There came upon Hyacinth one of those awful, hopeless despairs that children know. "In all the world nothing," he said, staring at the dull little flame. "No place, no heart, no love. Oh, kind God, is there no place or love for me in all the world?" I cannot endure to think of Hyacinth, poor lad, shut up despairing in the workshop with his loneliness, his cold, his hunger, on the eve of Christmas. He looked at the chisel in his hand and thought that by a touch of that he might be at peace, somewhere not far from God, only it was forbidden. Then came the tears, the great sobs that sickened and deafened him so that he scarcely heard the gentle rattling of the latch. At least, I suppose it came then, but it may have been later. The story is all so vague here. I think that Hyacinth must have gone to the door, opening it upon the still woods and the frosty stars, and the lad who stood outside must have said, "I see you are working late, friend. May I come in?" Or something like that. Hyacinth brushed his ragged sleeve across his eyes and opened the door wider with a little nod to the other to enter. Those lonely villages strung along the great river see strange wayfarers adrift inland from the sea. Hyacinth said to himself that surely here was such a one. Afterward, he told the curé that for a moment he had been bewildered. Blinking into the stranger's eyes, he lost for a flash the first impression of youth and received one of some incredible age or sadness. But this also passed, and he knew that the wanderer's eyes were only quiet, very quiet. He turned within the door, smiling at Hyacinth and shaking some snow from his fur cap. He did not seem more than 16 or so. "It's very cold outside," he said. "There is a big oak tree on the edge of the fields that has split in the frost and frightened all of the little squirrels asleep there. Next year it will make an even better home for them. And see what I found close by." He opened his fingers and showed Hyacinth a little sparrow lying unruffled in his palm. "Poor thing," whispered Hyacinth. "Poor thing, is it dead then?" He touched it with a gentle finger. "No," answered the strange boy, "it's not dead. We'll put it here among the shavings, not far from the lamp, and it will be well by morning." He smiled at Hyacinth again, and the shambling lad felt as if the scent of sandalwood had deepened, and the lamp flame burned clearer, but the stranger's eyes were only quiet. "Have you come far?" asked Hyacinth. "It is a bad season for traveling, and the wolves are out in the woods." "A long way," said the other, "a long, long way. I heard a child cry." "There's no child here," answered Hyacinth, shaking his head. "Monsieur l'Auriel is not fond of children. He says they cost him too much money. But if you have come far, you must be cold and hungry, and I have no food or fire. At the Cinque Chateau you will find both." The stranger looked at him again with those quiet eyes, and Hyacinth fancied his face was familiar. "I'll stay here," he said. "You are very late at work, and you are unhappy." "Why, as to that," answered Hyacinth, rubbing again at his cheeks and ashamed of his tears, Most of us are sad at one time or another, the good God knows. Stay here and welcome if it pleases you. And you may take a share of my bed, though it is no more than a pile of balsam boughs and an old blanket in the loft. But I must work at this cabinet, for the drawers must be finished, and the handles put on, and these corners carved all by the holy morning, or my wages will be paid with a stick. You have a hard master, put in the other boy, but if he would pay you with blows upon the feast of Noel. He is hard enough, said Hyacinth. But once he gave me a dinner of sausages, and one summer some melons. If my eyes will stay open, I will finish this by morning, but indeed I am sleepy. Stay with me for an hour or so, friend, and talk to me of your wanderings, so that time may pass more quickly. I will tell you of the country where I was a child, answered the stranger. And while Hyacinth worked, he told of sunshine and dust, of the shadows of vine leaves on the flat white walls of a house, of rosy doves on the flat roof, of the flowers that come in the spring, crimson and blue, and white cyclamen in the shadow of the rocks, of the olive, the myrtle, the almond, until Hyacinth's slow fingers ceased working and his sleepy eyes blinked wonderingly. See what you have done, friend, he said at last. You have told of all the pretty things that I have done no work for an hour, and now the cabinet will never be finished, and I shall get a beating. Let me help you, smiled the other. I also was raised by a carpenter. At first, Hyacinth would not, fearing to trust the sweet wood out of his own hands, but at length he allowed the stranger to fit in one of the little drawers, and so deftly was the work done that Hyacinth pounded his fist on the bench in admiration. You have a pretty knack, he cried. It seemed as if you did not hold the drawer in your hands a moment, and hey-ho, it jumped right into its place. Let me fit the other little drawers while you rest a while, said the wanderer. So Hyacinth curled up among the shavings, and the stranger fell to work upon the little cabinet of sandalwood. Here begins what the curé believes is a dream within a dream. Sometimes I am forced to agree with him, but then I see as clearly as with old Madame's eyes, and with her and Hyacinth I say, I believe. Hyacinth said he lay upon the shavings in the sweetness of the sandalwood and was very tired. He thought of the country where the stranger had been a boy, of the flowers on the hills, of the laughing leaves of aspen and poplar, the golden flowering anise, and the golden sun upon the dusty roads, until he was warm. All the time, through these pictures, as though through a painted veil, he was aware of the other boy, the boy with quiet eyes at work upon the cabinet, nutmeg, smoothing, fitting, and polishing. He does work better than I, thought Hyacinth, but he was not jealous. And again he thought, it is growing towards morning, in a little while I will get up and help him. But he did not, for the dream of warmth and the smell of sandalwood held him in a sweet drowse. Also he said that he thought the stranger was singing as he worked, and there seemed to be a sense of some music in the shed, though he could not tell whether it came from the boy's lips or from the shabby old tools as he used them. Stars are much paler, thought Hyacinth, and soon it will be morning, and the corners are not yet carved. I must get up and help this kind one in the little moment. Only I'm so tired, and the music and the sweetness seemed to wrap him and fold him, and he could not move. He lay without moving behind the forest. There shone a pale glow of some indescribable color that was neither green nor blue, while in termines and the church bells began to ring. Day will be here soon, thought Hyacinth, immovable in the deep sleep of his, and with day will come Monsieur l'Oriel with his stick. I must get up and help, for even yet the corners are not carved. But he did not get up. Instead, he saw the stranger look at him again, then lay a brown finger lightly upon the 4 empty corners of the cabinet. And Hyacinth saw the reddish-brown wood ripple and heave and break as little clouds when the wind goes through the sky. And out of them thrust forth little birds, and after them the lilies, for a moment living, but even while Hyacinth looked, growing hard and reddish-brown and settling back into the sweet wood. Then the stranger laid all the tools neatly in order, and opening the door quietly, went away into the woods. Hyacinth lay still among the shavings for a long time, and then he crept slowly to the door. The sun, not yet risen, set its first beams upon the delicate mist of frost afloat beneath the trees, and so all the world was aflame with splendid gold. Far away down the road, a dim figure seemed to move amid the glory. But the splendor was such that Hyacinth was blinded. His breath came sharply as the glow beat in great waves on the wretched shed, on the foam of shavings, on the cabinet with the little birds, and the lilies carved in the corners. "Blessed be the Lord," whispered Hyacinth, clasping his slow hands. And the little sparrow came from his nest among the shavings and shook his wings to the light. The end. I hope you enjoyed The Worker in Sandalwood and hearing about one wood carver, one carpenter who was helped by another. I think that we all need help sometimes, and there is a God in heaven who is willing to come down and help us, whether we are little birds or boys in need of love, or whether there's something else going on in your life. Thank you for joining me for this story, and I hope to see you again soon. Merry Christmas.